What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Bunny Operator here. Thank you for joining us. This is Inside the Industry, episode 7, featuring my buddy Drew, aka Drew's Shenanigans, on Instagram. You've probably seen him on Mr. Pew Lives and the Unlucky Ducks Instagram, but you know, Drew's IG itself has quite a bit of following, and he's provided a lot of good content out there for the folks. Without further ado, go ahead, Drew. Talk about yourself.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Drew. So I am currently active duty in the Army right now. I've been in the Army for 14 years, going on 15 now. And I can honestly say it's been a wild ride, man. Like, I am no means a door kicker. Like, I even put that in my profile. Like, I am not the dude that's going around fucking clearing rooms and doing all that type of stuff. It's not me. So my job is logistics. So what you guys see going on in the world right now, guys not having the right equipment, the fuel, the ammo to sustain themselves while they're fighting, that's my job. My job is to make sure that those guys that are doing that type of stuff, kicking down doors, riding in tanks, doing all of that, it's my job to make sure that they have food, water, ammo, everything they need to sustain fighting. That is my sole purpose.
Yep. And for those of you that are watching at home, there's actually a lot that Drew can't talk about, so we're just not going to get into it really. But just understand that Drew's job is very important, and honestly, he's being very humble about it. All right, so let's talk about your entry into the firearms community itself, and then how you got together with all these folks.
So it's funny how that worked out. So 2020 was a weird year for all of us with everything that went on during that year, between COVID and all the other crazy stuff. So I actually met Mr. Pew Life and Phil, the Unlucky Duck, through social media itself. And that's how most of us connected. So with it all started with Rex, honestly. Like, I met him through a Filipino veterans page on Facebook. And after that, it kind of just took off. Like, he invited me to go to the range one day, and I've been buddies with him and Phil ever since. And it just led to one thing after another. I met you guys.
Yeah.
I met Asian Gun Society. I met Rooftop Asians. I met the actual Rooftop, aka Viet.con. I met him. Like, if it wasn't for 2020 and us being locked down like that, I would have never met any of you guys. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty trippy, like how we just all basically came together because of the start of the whole shutdown thing. And the firearms community itself is already pretty small, but then you add Asian firearms owners and that community, and as well as you guys, you're segregated in your region, and then we're segregated in our region, but we somehow just came together. And I think it was through Rooftop or even Asian Gun Society that we all got together somehow. And you know what's funny is that I don't know them either. Like, I didn't know them either. So it was just kind of like, okay, we're just a bunch of random people who just somehow formed a smaller net community, or I guess expanded our own small communities to be one larger community. So that was pretty cool, man.
No, it definitely was. Like, I didn't realize how many other Asian shooters were out there until we connected with everybody, and we realized how big this really was.
Right. Yeah, and that was interesting too, is that like Rex and I, we've communicated prior because of our social media presence, or at least our attempt, or my attempt to be in the social media world. And we've communicated before, but not like how you and I are. You and I were pretty much, we talk almost daily, you know, about the antics that go on in the world. So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I actually really feel like a lot of you guys are really, really good friends. Like, I would, if you came down, I was like, yeah, man, just come over.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
all the time up here anyway, so it's like, hey, if you're Pacific Northwest, just let me know you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you've definitely been very welcoming, and said that anytime I go up there, you know, you've always got a spare space for me. So that's legit, dude. So that's the type of community that you folks out there can develop for yourselves as well. You know, it's yes. The age of the internet. You can meet a lot of people. All right, so Drew, your history growing up, how did that go out? I mean, but you're Filipino-American?
Yes. So I grew up in Southern California my whole life. I'm from Orange County. That's where I grew up for the 18 years of my life before I joined the military. And growing up in Orange County, or even in California in general, you wouldn't think that there's incidents of racism or whatever you want to call it there are incidents like me growing up in Orange County and then going to specific areas like Newport Beach, Huntington Beach. I didn't know stuff like that existed until I stepped my foot in there, and there were incidents that did happen. People would yell stuff out the window. People would look at you dirty, all of that. Like, it got to the point where I was in high school, I think actually middle school. Me and my friends were in Newport Beach. We're just walking down the street, minding our business, and then these 4 dudes in the car just started yelling stuff out of the window. Like, I don't remember if they were racial slurs or not, but it was enough to be like, "Yo, who the hell are these dudes, and why are they talking to us?"
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just dicks being dicks. You know, I get it, man. It's just people just want to be assholes for no reason. Just leave people the fuck alone.
Yeah, and
especially kids, right? You guys were just kids at the time.
Yeah, I think we were like 13 to 14 years old. Like, why would you say, like, you're a grown ass man? Right. Why did you go out of your way to go mess with a bunch of teenagers that are probably not even gonna do anything to you anyway?
Right.
Leave people alone, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Did any of that influence your decision to join the military or anything like that?
Honestly, it didn't. I wanted to leave California anyway. It's just, that's all I knew. Like, Southern California was all I knew my whole life, and I felt like I was in a bubble. Like, that's what they call the Orange County anyway. They call it the little bubble because no one ever wants to leave.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was in my junior year of high school, and I was thinking of where I wanted to go to college and then do afterwards. And I was like, do I really want to stay here my whole life? Like, I wanted to see other things. And then during the height of the war, it's like, well, maybe I should just join the army because, like, I can't get out of here by myself. Like, I wouldn't say I was a bad student. I was an okay student. I was like a B student. I cared just enough just to get by, but I wasn't like top of the class type person. And I knew the only way I could leave was through another means, like joining the military, because I couldn't do it on my own anyway. My dad didn't have enough money to send me to college by himself, especially if I left the state. Like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just gonna join. And 2 weeks after graduation, I left, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is appealing to folks to young adults that want to get out, because we're talking about, your entire, I guess, your basic necessities are taken care of, versus going out there in the world and you have to get a job and to be able to afford a place by yourself. It's a lot harder, especially maybe even today right now, because of the cost of everything is so much higher. It's just that it's really hard for kids, or really just barely adults, just to even get by out there. So yeah, I mean, good for you for taking that plunge to go forward. But you got to experience quite a bit that a lot of people in America really don't, honestly. That's good, man. So beyond that incident, I mean, you faced any other hurdles growing up as a young Asian American in the world? Sorry, are you first generation here? Born?
I'm first generation born here, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, how is that, man? That middle ground when you have to learn how America is supposed to be, then your parents being immigrants, you're kind of in that in-between world,
So I don't know, man. Like, it was kind of weird growing up, I used to say, because my dad was super traditional. Most Asian parents are. It's like, hey, you're gonna go to college, you're gonna do this. And then being Filipino, it's like, hey, why don't you go be a nurse, go work in the medical field? And then for me, it was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I rebelled. Like, I don't call myself the black sheep of the family, but everyone else in the family is like a professional, right? Lawyer, doctor, teacher, whatever. And then there's me, barely a college degree. But back to you were saying, though, I did grow up in a single parent home, so that was pretty challenging in itself. Like, most people would have 2 parents in the house, and then having 1 parent in the house and having a grandparent raise you, it's a different dynamic. Like, right. Your dad or mom is at work every day, you barely see them, and then on the weekend they go do their own thing and kind of by yourself. So I kind of had to figure things out on my own a lot. Like, kind of the reason why I did decide to leave. It's like, I want to be on my own, like, because it was like that for me my whole life anyway. So yeah. Well, I might as well just do it for real. Like, if I have to fend for myself, I'll just not do it here.
Yeah, that's definitely difficult, to because you definitely need that the nurturing from one side and then the disciplinary and, I guess, teachings from the other, or both ways, really. So did you find that you were, I guess, raised more so by your grandparents than your dad because he was always at work?
I mean, it was a little bit of both, and then my aunts would raise me too. So
Okay,
I got a little bit of like mother figure in there too, but it's not the same as having both parents in the household.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, I mean, like you said, I suppose it did influence your decisions as you went forward, right?
Definitely.
Did you find that affected your thought processes as you were coming up in the military?
I can't say for sure that it did, but I don't know, man. Like I can't explain it. Like just everything I've gone through in my life to where I am now, it's really hard to explain. Like put it into the words.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even know where to start, honestly.
Okay, man. It's all right. I'm sure we can tap those things as the conversation goes on. So okay, so you're barely 18. You've enlisted into the army, and then you get sent off to basic, right? You think in the live I did previously with Drew Kim, he was talking about how in basic he was like the only Asian guy in his in boot camp, except for the other Asian guy he saw in a different company or platoon or whatever the nomenclature is on there. And that was an interesting conversation because he said that they would pass each other. He said that they would pass each other by and they would make peripheral eye contact, and they would want to meet each other so bad, but they couldn't just because they were segregated by just by the nature of where they were stationed, kind of thing. So, but I mean, was it like that for you as well?
So for basic training, it wasn't bad. It was a pretty mixed crew, and when I did leave out of LAX, and out of LA Maps, so I did meet another Filipino guy there. We ended up in the same company for basic training, and we just talked from there. So there was someone else that I could connect with, but when we physically got there, like I really did feel out of place because so if people don't know, only 1% of the U.S. population actually raises their right hand and serves the country. Now you throw the Asian onto there, it's even smaller. So when I was in basic training, there was maybe 3 of us in the whole company that were of Asian descent. And then fast forward to job training, which I talked about in your previous live before, that's when things got kind of, I wouldn't say bad, but that's when I kind of got a little bit of an awakening. So when I did join in 2007, it was the height of the war. It was during the surge of Iraq. So all sorts of people were being let in the military. Like there was waivers for everything. They just wanted to fill numbers like, hey, we need bodies, go. So when I was in Virginia, this is the first time I've ever been that far up north, the Northeast at least. Or actually not the first time being in the South, but if you want to call it that. But being up there, it was a different world. I was the only Asian kid in my class for training. And I think there were only 20 of us. And things got a little weird. Like the first week I was there, nothing happened. We all just introduced each other like, okay. But as time went on, that's when I started feeling out of place, feeling alienated. And then that's when, I wouldn't call it bullying. Okay, you know what? It probably was. Yeah, it was bullying. They started calling me names, all sorts of stuff. And when you're 18 years old, you're just living in a new place, never been away from home ever. It does get scary.
Yeah.
What do? Like, do you say something back? And if you did, they probably are going to beat you up anyway because there's only one of you and there's 20 of them.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, if you did tell the drill sergeants, would they actually believe you? Because the people that were making fun of me were the same race as my drill sergeants. So if I said something like, would this guy even believe me? Or just tell me like, hey, go suck it up type thing.
Yeah, that's a definitely difficult situation, like you said too, because you were just so young and inexperienced with the world outside of what you know. So I can see how it's really hard because you don't have a support system, or at least an immediate support system. Did you end up making good friends that were tight with you back, or at least in that school?
I did actually. One, we talked for a little bit, then we lost contact, and then. When I got stationed in North Carolina again, I actually ended up seeing him again. And I didn't even think he was still in. But then that's when I found out most of the guys that were in our class got in trouble or got kicked out. It was just us 2 that remained.
Interesting. And for you folks at home, the class is basically, it's after basic and you get sent to your job training. Is that what it is, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it was kind of weird, man. Like it wasn't my first time in the South, but it was my first time being in South Carolina when I did go to basic training. Look, I mean, you're locked down anyway, but experiencing humidity like that in the middle of July, in the South, if you guys have never experienced that, it's literally hell on earth. Like it's already 90 degrees outside. You throw in humidity, it feels like it's 120 outside. Like you're just sweating for no reason, just walking outside. It's miserable. And then imagine being outside doing field stuff, like going to the range, going for a ruck march, camping outside, and it's dark. Like even at nighttime, it's still like 90 degrees and you're still sweating in a tent. Like it sucks.
You're just like soggy for no reason.
Exactly. Like you walk out, like if you guys have never been to Virginia before or anywhere in that region, like you walk outside and it feels like someone just showered on you and just walking outside.
Yeah, you know, that's definitely interesting. So I have been to Virginia, but the one time it was winter, so I didn't get to experience that. There was oddly, I was in Norfolk I was visiting a buddy who was stationed out there at the naval base, and he took me to this one random Vietnamese restaurant off Virginia Beach, and it was like a fusion place, but they had like everything Asian there when you walk in. It was supposed to be Vietnamese cuisine, but you walk in, it's like fancy dining, almost like a Ruth Chris, but they served pho, and they had chow mein, they had sushi. It was like an all-in-one Asian like persuasion kind of thing.
I mean, that is the interesting part, man. Like if you grow up in Southern California or California in general, like me,
right,
you get super spoiled. You have everything at your disposal. The Peruvian place is next to the Puerto Rican place, which is next to the Mexican place, which is next to whatever you want within like a 5-block way. Like if you live in major metropolitan areas like where we're from, you can eat whatever you want. But when you go to certain parts of the country, like I was in Georgia for 4.5 years, and there was a lot of Korean people there, but the food wasn't the same. There was one pho place, it was run by a bunch of Japanese people. Then when we moved to North Carolina, the pho there was run by Korean people. Like it was super weird, and the quality of food was not the same. Right. Same thing with the Mexican food, man. Like growing up in Southern California or in California in general, you're really picky about what type of Mexican food you like. And when you go to places like Georgia, North Carolina, or any states that within the Bible Belt itself, like it doesn't taste the same, and it's never going to be as good as back home.
Yeah, I get it. You know, it's simply a concentration of people that know what they're doing with that food. I guess like generationally, you know, a lot of these recipes have been passed down, but maybe more so over there where they're more segregated, it's harder to do that. Maybe because they're just not there as generational, or the supply chain.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, and two, you cater to your demographic. So if your demographic is a certain race, you're like, okay, well, I can't really serve this. It's not going to sell. Let me just try to fuse this together to get them to get interest in my food.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that, that there's necessarily a need for them to go 100% authentic for people's palates that don't understand it to begin with, you know? So if it's like, if I'm making pho for people that don't understand what pho is, I don't think I necessarily need to go out and go find like rare ass ingredients and boil beef bones down for like 3 days, you know, just to give it to them, when they're probably just gonna sriracha that thing up anyways, you know, or put hella holy sin in there.
Or make bad reviews on Yelp like an Iowa.
Exactly, right. Oh, it's got raw meat. How dare they give me raw meat? Yeah, it's pho. It's supposed to be rare steak. Like, you know, dude, that's interesting, man. So past Georgia, when you finally get stationed, after that was Pac Northwest for you?
It was. And I spent 4.5 years in Georgia before I realized, like, I want to go back to the West Coast. Like, I don't know what it is about being on this side of the country. Like, it just attracts me back. Like, I lived on both sides. I lived on East and lived West. Like, there's pros and cons to both. Like, it is cheaper to live on that side of the country all day. But then you have to deal with hurricanes and other things like humidity and big bugs, things that bite you, like poisonous spiders. Then you come here to the West Coast. The beaches aren't as nice. I will say that. Like, East Coast beaches were way nicer. Like the North Carolina beach. Yeah, the North Carolina beaches, when I was there, they were white sand. The water was clear. It was warm. When you go back to California, the water's murky and it's cold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got that.
No waves. Like, you can't really surf on that side. Like, the better waves are where we live, especially during El Nino season.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, it's that Atlantic versus Pacific side. I got you. You know, we get great whites over here on the West Coast side.
That's
you know, it's a different world, and we have orcas. You know, we just have a whole bunch of different type of animals. But East Coast has a lot of interesting things too. So it's good that you got to see the rest of the world on your journey, or at least the rest of the US on your journeys. Well, damn, Drew, looks like you've had quite a bit of a journey there so far. But welcome back to the West Coast anyways. Okay, so moving on to the next question here. As far as the firearms industry, your IG does give out solid content for the folks that are out there. I mean, I've seen your posts and some of your spicy content, and it's legit stuff. So I mean, how did you get into the firearms world, or even just firearms in general?
So I'm gonna bring it back to about 2012 was when, actually no, it's 2010. 2010, I bought my first firearm, and that's when it all started. That was starting a family, and I felt like I needed to protect them. I didn't have anything because I was living in Georgia at the time. I was like, well, I don't have a gun with me. I was like, I got a kid here. Like, I need to protect him somehow. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but my first pistol was a Springfield XD9.
Nice. What caliber? Oh, XD9.
It was a 9mm. Like, I didn't really know much about firearms. Like, I was always into guns as growing up. Like, I did a lot of airsoft when I grew up in Southern California, but my household never had any firearms. Like, my dad wasn't like super anti-gun, but we didn't have any guns in the house. Like, our immediate family, no one had guns in their house. Like, it was our family friends that did have firearms, but as far as like my immediate family goes, like, I didn't grow up shooting at all. The closest I ever got to was going to airsoft matches. That's as close as I got. And then when I was of age, I finally bought my first pistol, and everything kind of just progressed from there. And when it was right on the back half of me living in Georgia is when I first bought my pistol. Then I moved here to the Pacific Northwest, and that's when I bought my first AR-15, which was what was it? It was an M&P Sport. Back then, it was only $600. I was like, well, it's on sale. We'll buy this.
Like the first sport. First sport? Nice.
The first one. So the decent one.
Yeah.
So that was my first AR-15 that I ever bought. And it kind of just progressed from there. I ended up buying a Mossberg shotgun after that. But fast forward until I moved to North Carolina. That was like 5 years of me living here in the Pacific Northwest before I got reassigned to go somewhere else. And that's when I started getting more into the building firearms piece. So that's when my journey began of that fiasco. Like, my first lower I ever bought was an Anderson lower. So I didn't know any better. I was like, well, it's a cheap lower. It's like $60. Let me go do this. And the 3 years of me being there, it slowly progressed into what you guys see now. Like, eventually I got into better brands, better parts, all of that. Like, if you guys go on my Instagram and see my first build that I ever did, it was a monstrosity. Like, looking at it now, it's like, what the hell were you thinking? And honestly, man, it's part of the process. Like, you live and you learn. Like, not everyone's going to start at the same level. You have to start somewhere. And I did start with the products that people don't really like to talk about. But it was a learning curve. Like, when you start building your own guns, like, you know the ins and outs of mechanics, what works, what doesn't work. And what you guys see now with actually this build right here, like, this is the latest one right now. Like, this is like my baby right now. So my other one that you guys see, the black one, like, I didn't really retire it, but this one has all the parts that I wanted to build with, because I wasn't a budget back then. And now that I've ranked up and made a little bit more money, it's like, okay, I can save up and buy nicer things.
No, I get it, Drew. I mean, I always tell people when they ask me like how I got into this world, and when I explain to them, I always like usually end up with, "Hey, man, I was a FUD once too." We all go through that phase. We all go through that initial, well, we didn't know any better, or we're trying to not necessarily ball out on a budget. We're just more budget minded, more cost conscious. But it's like with anything really. You start off kind of at the low end, you kind of learn your way, and then figure out what you like, what you don't like, and then go from there. And some of the mistakes that I found that a lot of the newer shooters are making now is they're just trying to go ball out like off the gate, and they not only do they make mistakes in their decisions, but they also mix and match the parts that are high end with the parts that are kind of shit end, and it just creates this level of monstrosity that you were alluding to before. And really, folks, for you folks who are watching, you don't build based on clout, right? It just doesn't look good. Like the folks that actually do shoot, when they see your equipment, they know exactly the type of personality you are, at least for that particular time. Of course, everyone can grow and change, as Drew's example, as you can see, and my example, if you can see. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right on that, Drew. And going back, I want to point out that the Sport 1 that Drew was talking about before, the original M&P Sport 1 was the good one because it had 5R rifling. Granted, people were complaining that the Sport 1 didn't have a dust cover and didn't have a forward assist, right? So they went back and, of course it's not going to have it because Smith & Wesson's trying to put out an affordable gun like off the bat. But then people start complaining, and then Smith & Wesson went back and put a dust cover on, put a forward assist, but they still have to cut costs, so they cut the 5R rifling out. And they just overall just made it a worse rifle because the build quality went down. And that's all because the consumers just didn't know shit. And then, yeah, exactly. And then the Sport 2 came out, and it was all downhill from there because they started adding that railed gas block, if you remember that, for their optics ready version. Nobody uses that.
No, it looks ugly.
It's like ridiculous. Like who wants that? At least throw on like a free floated handguard and stuff like that. But I digress. That's different topic for a different time. So you're in North Carolina now, and so what influenced you to start, I guess, going down the path of proper builds, if you will?
It was more of me immersing myself more into social media. So before I started like actually heavily investing into my page, I kind of just posted whatever, whenever. I didn't have that many followers back then. It was like 400 people that were following me. I was private back then, but it was just getting more exposure and actually seeing other people's pages, like all your big name shooters like Arantham and those guys. Like actually looking to see, it's like, okay, well, that looks nice. That's a good brand. And then actually starting to follow manufacturers like Aero Precision, all your big name guys. I started following all of them. I was like, ooh, that looks nice. Maybe this looks good. And then when I went to my first gun show in North Carolina, I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, oh, this looks cheap. Like, let me go pick that up. Like this Anderson lower is $60. I was on a tight budget back then, so I was like, well, you don't have $200 to be blowing on a Sequence Precision lower that my friend did, because that was part of it too. Because my friend was doing his first thing out there, but he had more cash than me, so he was dropping on brand name stuff like Sequence Precision and all that other brand name stuff. I forgot what other parts he used, but that's what he was building out of. And then there was me building an Anderson lower with a Geisley trigger. Nice. So what else? Yeah, and I had a Daniel Defense barrel too, which was totally weird. Like I put everything you're not supposed to do, I did, and I had to learn the hard way. Eventually, my upper, I bought a Yankee Hill upper for my gun. So it was a really weird build with an SB tactical brace on it. It was totally weird build. Like I didn't know what I was doing.
So you started off with a pistol build then for that one. Nice.
That one was a 10.5-inch build that I did. It wasn't even a rifle. Like honestly, even to this day, I haven't really built a rifle. Actually, no, I have my 16-inch 308. But back then, it was just an AR pistol that I started with. Like with whatever money I had. And then, mind you, this is 2000. What year is this? 2017, when ammo prices were still cheap. Like 1,000 rounds of 5.56 was $296 back then. And I didn't really buy much because I was still on a tight budget.
Yeah, but those were the good days, though.
Yeah, those were the good days. And on top of that, like in North Carolina, it's not like here in the Pacific Northwest where you have public land to shoot. California too. You guys had the BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. You have all that public land to shoot on. Here, the state, what's it called? I forgot what it's called here. But anyways, we have public land to shoot on here. In North Carolina, or anywhere in the South, really, it's hard to find public land to shoot on. Everything's private. You either go to a flood range, you go to a range that'll let you do tactical stuff or whatever, defensive shooting, and it's going to cost you $200-300 a session.
Oh.
You know someone.
Yeah, that sucks, man. So, I mean, it sounds, I mean, you started off a lot better off than I did. You started off with already a shorty, and most of my earlier builds were 60 inches. And, I started off my build, I was with an Anderson lower too, but it's because my best friend at the time, he was just like your case, or your buddy was building it. He started off with an Anderson. He was like, yeah, man, they're cheap. We just do it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And dived there. And granted, I didn't go Geisley and a DD barrel, because at that time I just went whatever the cheapest I could find. What did I use? I found an upper through the used market. And back then I didn't know shit, right? So I kicked myself in the ass for letting this go now, but it was a factory built Psionics upper. It was a 16-inch Psionics upper, right? And back then, like I didn't know who Psionics was. I was like, okay, I did a little bit of research. Like, okay, so they issue or they make weapons for the government. Okay, cool. But now, as you know, as immersed as I am in the industry now, so I understand Psionics. You know, like I've spoken to Josh and Colin over there before, and I'm like, damn, they're like one of the best and hidden gems in the industry as far as like factory built rifles are. And you know, I'm thinking back then, I was like, damn. And I swapped that barrel out for a BA barrel, like a BA Hansen, right? And it's like there's nothing inherently necessarily wrong with the BA barrels, but it's like I swapped out a damn good ass barrel for like a medium grade barrel, you know, just because I thought it was too heavy at the time. I was like, yeah, medium weight is too heavy. I want lightweight, right? Yeah. And and it just kind of went down from there. But yeah, maybe it wasn't until I just started actually taking a break on buying stuff and really just started researching and making formulated decisions before I actually took the plunge further. And of course, working within the industry and then learning and being mentored by all the people I've met through my vendor status with them, and it has kind of led me to where I am today. So I'm curious for you, it's like, when was that point for you when you actually took that pause from clicking the buy button and actually started to go into that deep dive and researching?
So it was still in North Carolina when I started doing the researching, but it didn't fully develop until I got back here to the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
So when I met Rex and the other guys, that's when it really started. That's when I started buying more quality stuff. I started being around people that were doing builds and we're actually doing defensive style shooting. Like before, when I lived in North Carolina, it was all stationary. Like you couldn't do so. Like, you know how it is going to flood range. Yeah. 1 round per second. All the other dumb crap. And then when I get back here, like I never did anything like that. Even it being in the military, like there's a whole misconception about military service. That's a whole nother conversation. Like we can get into that later. But as far as like the building piece, that's when it really, really began. Like when I did get back here, I swapped a lot of parts. I moved to Aero Precision afterwards because they were based here in the Pacific Northwest. I was like, well, these seem like a pretty decent company. Let me go buy their stuff. And it was cheap at the time. And after hanging out with the guys for the last, I want to say like 2 years now, like I've started to buy a lot nicer stuff. And then talking to you guys too, like watching everybody's pages, like, ooh, this looks good. Doing more research, watching YouTube videos, and then just meeting other shooters here in the area. Like, ooh, that looks nice. What's that?
No, that's awesome, man. So it is relatively recent for you then, because within the last 2 years is when you started to really deep dive into, I guess, being more meticulous about why you do things and how you do things. So I mean, no, that's pretty solid, man. I didn't think it was that recent for you. So I mean, you're doing pretty good.
It is, yeah. Even looking at it now, it is pretty recent that I actually started this. Like this. Actually, this build right here is actually recent. I think this one's like not even a year old now.
Yeah.
Still pretty new. Hold on, there it is. Okay, yeah. This one's still pretty new. Like my other gun has an arrow rail on it. On this one, I put a Geisley on this one. I don't remember what the barrel was on this. But I mean, people shit on arrow, but I mean, they're with everything going on in Washington right now, like they've stood their ground, man. Like I respect it. They basically told everybody, it's like, we're not leaving. This is our home. Our employees are here. We're immersed in this community, like we're gonna stay. And that's what I respected about them.
Right.
Like even like because there's a lot of gun control stuff happening in Washington State. Like recently, we just had our mag ban.
Right.
And it just passed the House. Like it's waiting for the governor's signature, and he's gonna sign it.
Right.
And that's it. Like before that, it was 1639. Before that, it was 539. It's just one thing after another.
Yep. And you know, and everybody watched it go through, and it's kind of like one of those things that Californians have been telling the rest of the United States forever now, is that it's not going to stop. Like even if you see it, you monitor and you lawsuit it, because the fact that the legislation or the legislators, they pretty much control this. Plus, if you have that particular governor that's in place, of course they're going to sign it. You know, there's always some back alley road to do. We've seen it time and time again with California. You know, they try to ban it, it gets shut down, or it doesn't, and they backwater it in. They backdoor it in through a different bill that has nothing to do with guns. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny that you brought that up, because Grand Thumb posted today that that bill had passed the House, and my comment in his post was essentially, I'm just waiting for all the FUDs and edgelords to tell you to move out of Washington, just like how they always tell people in other restricted states. I was like, you know, it's like these guys don't get it, man. The folks out there, all the FUDs and the edgelords, like, oh yeah, just get up and move. I would resist tyranny 1%. Like you didn't resist tyranny with the mask situation during 2020 during the shutdowns. You know, a lot of you didn't. A lot of people didn't. So it's like, okay, you're totally going to resist an entire legislative body. Like, yeah, I haven't seen you go out there and do anything. You know, go rally. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna go into like the whole political spectrum, but
right.
My thing is, man, it's like guys in states that like free states, they don't get it, man. Like, guns aren't the only factor why people stay. Like, most of us have roots of where we are. We have family here, we have friends, we have jobs, and that's the places that we're in. Like, we make a lot more money here than we do in those other places.
Correct. Right. Yeah, like I get the whole cost of living adjustment thing too, but it's still not just the raw capital. You know, I get that. They don't get it too. And frankly, you know, it's like majority of the people that post those edgy things like online and stuff like that, if you look at the content that they're putting out there, or freaking the equipment they're trying to show off to the world, it's exactly what you and I were talking about earlier. You know, it's the people that mix and match, or even not even mixing the high-end stuff. They just are going for the first Amazon tier thing they see. Like, oh, here's an advertisement from wish.com. Oh, I'm totally gonna buy this light laser combo with a million lumens and all this shit, right? Fucking green laser on their pistol that they can't find a holster for because it's not compatible. You know?
Yeah. Or the guy that's running subpar parts with a can. It's like, dude, how do you have an NFA item? You have everything in the world you can buy, but you decided to go there.
Right. And not even understand the concept of barrel concentricity. And muzzle device and can concentricity, you know,
or it's even like, aligning your barrel with your can. Like, I know people that own cans that don't do that. It's like, look, dude, you just spent $1,000 to $1,700 on the can, and you didn't even bother to align it. If that thing blows up in your face, that's on you.
Correct. It's like that one photo that you and I saw of the person that put a Sons of Liberty 5.56 Knox on a 9mm barrel, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's like, damn. That is some dumb shit, man. Yeah. I
mean, like, and when you live in states that do get restrictive, like, you learn how to appreciate things. And that's what these guys don't get. Right. It's like, and I'm going to totally blast Texas out there because they're totally guilty of this, because they say it all the time and it's really annoying. Like, oh, we're this state. It never happened to us. But when it does, you're going to feel the pain that we feel. Right. Washingtonians said the same thing. And look what happened now.
Correct. Virginia as well, you know. And it's kind of funny because the folks in Texas, like, you know, Dallas is a blue city.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's like, you guys are not immune to this.
No, you're not.
Folks in every other state that's out there, you have people in there that are voting this way. You know, they're voting against your rights, and you know, you're not immune to this shit at all. So
no, like even Wisconsin, man. Like, Wisconsin's a weird one. People wouldn't think that Madison, Wisconsin is like totally the opposite.
Right.
And if you know anyone that lives there, they can tell you straight up, like, that is a blue city, and they run the whole place.
Right. No, absolutely, man. So I mean, you and I, we talk about this frequently. We're pretty much on the same page as far as this goes. And I certainly hope that situation for you folks up in the Pac Northwest up there get a little bit better. But you know, time will tell, because you certainly have, like, Grand Thumb's a pretty large presence, but we certainly have a lot of the internet and a lot of social media personalities that are watching this heavily right now, as with a lot of the other laws that are going on, such as the California and any other Ninth Circuit court cases that are going up to the Supreme Court to begin with. You know, now we've talked about essentially your equipment, where you are today, stuff that you're currently doing, future plans for yourself, anything that you'd like to do surrounding the firearms world, anything you want to advance with.
So since I met the guys, like, I've been trying to advance, like, getting more involved in the industry as far as like getting my name out there. Like, I went from 400 followers to like 2,200 now. It did take a long time to get there, but it was just trying to network with people. Like that's how I met you guys. Like just
Right.
start talking to people. Eventually, you're gonna start meeting certain people, and then you meet people from there, and then it just goes on and so forth. That's how I met those guys in Vegas, like the spam guys in Vegas. I don't even remember how I met them.
That's usually
weird,
how
man.
it goes, man. So what do you want to do with that when you
So
start amassing a
eventually,
following, I suppose?
I mean, I am super busy, like right now with work and
Mhm.
everything, but eventually I do want to get my own brand out there. Like I eventually want to make my own designs, make my own clothes. I mean, it's kind of cliche, like, oh, hey, you're starting a t-shirt brand, you're starting a sticker brand, patch brand, but I want something that's mine. And that's something that's always been on my plate. It's just I haven't been able to get on the ground just because I'm busy at work all the time. Like I'm never home, so it's like,
I gotcha.
well, when are you gonna really kick this off? And two, it's a capital thing. It's like, all right, well, how small can I start and work my way out? And the only way right now I can see is just getting my name out there. Like
Mhm.
we all know the deal with Instagram. Like it's really hard to get reach, and that's where I'm kind of stuck at now. It's like, okay, how do I find other avenues? And the way you get away from that is start talking to people. So when you do go to these shooting events, networking events, and that's just my advice to everyone else. Like just put your name out there. Start talking to dudes. Like that's how I met you.
Mhm.
And I don't believe in coincidences, but everything just kind of fell into place.
It's kind of like the snowball effect, but in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. For you folks, too. Another word of advice out there is that you know, you still have to vet people when you meet
Yes.
them, and that's absolutely important because as we've seen in the community recently, there have been a lot of snakes that have popped up. You know, a lot of clout chasers and folks who've misrepresented themselves in this community, and it's bad. So you still have to not only vet the people but verify the information that they're telling you. So it's just like in a lot of my videos that I post out, I usually tell y'all to, you know, verify what you're talking about or what the person's talking about, including me. You know, so you may or may not agree with me, so go out there, research and verify for yourself. And it's kind of a standing life rule that's goes beyond this firearms world to begin with, and I think it's an important lesson for everybody.
Well, yeah, especially in this community, like it's hard to find people that you're gonna click with and trust on top of that because you don't know who these people are. Like
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, like I was kind of wary when I first met some of the guys, like through the internet. I was like, I've never met these dudes in my life. Like there are a bunch of black SUVs gonna roll up on me type thing.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things too, man. Like if you have a gut feeling that something's not right, it probably isn't. But for the most part, the people I've met, like everybody's solid dudes. Like I can trust these guys, and I've gotten to know them. I got to know their families. Like it got to a personal level.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I mean, for the guys that don't have anyone to talk to, like I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like it is hard. Before I met everyone here, like I didn't have anyone. I just would watch videos, see the YouTube. I'd see these group of guys, like, oh wow, they're trained together. That's cool. Like when can I have that? And you just gotta be patient, man. Like you can't rush things. That's how you start getting into trouble because you get yourself mixed up in the wrong crew. Next thing you know, you're standing trial for something you didn't do.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's like you just have to watch the content that some of these folks online are posting. Like if you look at it and it doesn't feel right, then you probably trust your instincts on it, because a lot of times it's not right. You know, you can tell when there's footage and content that's being posted out just strictly for clout. You look at the stuff they're doing, you're like, what the hell are they doing? You know, it's like they straight up just flagged each other.
Yeah.
And they thought it was a good idea to publish that. Just like what's his name? That FUD dude, Such when he posted that photo of everybody pointing guns at each other basically. But he was the one that was taking the selfie.
Yeah, some things are not smart.
Yeah,
like there's a reason why we have blue guns. Like,
Right.
We're not going around. I don't care if the barrel's clear, you have a barrel flag in there. I'm still not pointing a live gun at somebody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, even at SHOT Show, like even at SHOT Show, even at these industry events and stuff, there are procedures for them to clear those chambers.
Yes.
There's usually something jammed down there at the same time. You know, it's very specific on how they do that, just to make sure nothing ever happens. So, you know, unlike the Hollywood situation that happened a few weeks ago or a few months ago. So yeah, so that's awesome, man. I hope that it works out for you for as far as your social media journey. I'm sure you'll I'm sure what you're doing or what you plan to do will evolve as you continue to progress and as your military career starts to go towards the point of near retirement.
Close, getting there.
That's what I'm saying, right? So it is a good time for you to do it now. Now the momentum is there, and as long as you stay active with it, I'm sure that by the time that you're done with the military life, that you will at least have an established path for you to follow. And that's kind of what everybody needs to do when they're done with one thing in their life and they move on and open to another chapter. So that's awesome, man. Segueing on that, your journey so far into the firearms world itself, what advice do you have to give to other people?
I mean, like I said before, like honestly, like it takes a lot of patience.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be things that you, especially during a build, like you're gonna do things wrong. Things aren't gonna work. Like when you build it, you put everything together. Like it's like being a kid, man. You put these Legos together, and then we see the final product. Like something doesn't look right, or when you actually turn play with it, something breaks. Same thing with your firearms. You build this AR, you spend months or even years building it, and then you finally go to shoot it, and it won't fire, it won't cycle. You're like, what the hell did I do wrong? And it's a lot of trial and error. Like even right now, like I'm having issues still with my 308. Like my 11.5-inch pistol build still won't cycle. I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on with it. But as far as that piece goes for the firearms, yes, definitely be patient, do your homework. Definitely start connecting with other people. And to add on top of that, trying to, like, I know we see this a lot in the firearms community. It's like, find your tribe. I know you guys have seen it a million times. And it sounds to the point where it does get cliche. It's like, find your tribe. Like, okay, that's cool. But where do I start?
Right.
And it goes back down to meeting people in person. Like even if you do go to a flood range, just start talking to people. Eventually you're gonna find someone that wants to do stuff like defensive shooting, like run and gun. Like, okay, hey, let's go run 10 yards and shoot this target. You're gonna meet that person. It's just you gotta put yourself out there. And if you're shy, like I'm sorry, but you have to do it. Like I wouldn't call myself an introvert, but I'm pretty weird with people in general. Like I don't really like talking to brand new people, but if I get a general feel that you're a good person, I'll talk to you.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. You know, I suppose that those boils down to just be yourself, man. Just go out there and have conversations with real people in person instead of nonstop social media. Granted, you and I are technically social media only in contact right now, but you know, it's just the way we communicate with each other, and it's not like we haven't had video conversations before. So you know, it's like we're good. It's just, you know, if you find that you have to hold back what you say around certain people, then even though you may be good with them, they're probably not going to be quote unquote your tribe, because you shouldn't have to hold back your personality around those people, you know, and things you want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, especially now too with the social media age, like you can portray to be anyone you want, but when it comes out that you've never done those things, the internet and then this community is small. Like they will eat you alive. Like just be yourself, man. Like I don't portray to myself, like in my pictures I look cool, but I'm not a cool guy by any means. Like I'm a loggy man. Like I give you your stuff so you can go be that door kicker. That's my job. I never portray myself as like, hey, yeah, I was so-and-so, or I did these cool things. And that's what we see a lot, especially with all these guys that have been exposed lately.
Right.
Like you don't have to, what's that term? You don't have to fake it to kick it or whatever.
You ain't got to lie to kick it. Tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your auntie. You ain't got to lie to kick it. Tell them.
Yeah,
you gotta lie to kick it, right?
Yeah. God, I sound like a boomer. Yeah, you don't have to lie to kick it, man. Be yourself. Like if you're a support dude, fucking own it. Like I will 100% say that I am a pogue, and if you guys don't know what that means person other than grunt. So I am not a combat arms guy. I don't do any that type of stuff, and I let you guys know that from the get-go. Like that is not me. That's not my job. I'll never portray myself ever doing that type of stuff. That's why you guys see me always posting dumb stuff. Like I'm not gonna post a video of me doing CQB. Like I'm just not gonna do it.
Right.
It'll look funny.
All right. So for you folks that don't understand how the military works out, as far as the jobs and what Drew is talking about, but he's not combat arms. So there's the whole world. There's the combat side versus everyone else. That's the whole the term pogue that he was talking about. And you know, Drew, why don't you elaborate on that and explain what that means to everybody?
There's certain jobs in the Army that actually require you to be a door kicker, essentially. There's not a lot of them out there. Everyone else, we're all support guys. we all support the guys that do that type of stuff. Like, especially for me as a logistics guy, like, I am by no means going to be that person that's going to kick that door. Now, could it happen? Sure. Like, there's people in my MOS specifically, the supply guy, and there's certain units that are infantry units, and you just happen to be there. You're the only one. Well, there's sometimes the command leadership is going to be like, hey, you're going on this convoy, and you're going to go on this foot patrol with us. We don't care that you're supply. You're a soldier. Like, get your ass out here, and you're going to be out here with us. But there's a whole subculture within the military in itself. There's just kind of like warring factions between combat arms guys versus support guys. And the combat arms guys like to poke fun at us. And there's a reason for it. Like, me being on this side, I can tell you exactly what it is. Because most support people in the military, they're lazy, man. Like, sorry to call you out, but that's just how I see it. Like, even being in the senior leadership now, I see it. Like, there's soldiers out there that don't want to do PT. They get fat. There's soldiers in there that don't want to shoot. Like, dude, you literally get paid to do this. We're telling you, hey, go work out. You need to do this. Go to the range. Go do this. And the support guy and the combat arms guys, that's all they do. All they do is work out and then go shoot or do other dumb stuff when they're not shooting, like sweeping a motor pool or taking out the trash or mopping the floor, whatever. But that's what they end up doing. Don't let them fool you, man. Like, when those guys aren't training, they're doing dumb stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you're basically a glorified janitor. That's what's going to happen. But anyways, back to the subject. But yeah, there's just like that. I wouldn't say it's a warring faction. It's just like them just talking a bunch of smack to us. But it stems from what I just said. Like, you see these support soldiers. You're supposed to be a person in uniform. You're supposed to be able to depend on the person to your left and right. But then you have people that don't want to do the right thing. They skip out on PT. They find every excuse in the book to not train. Like, people pay hundreds of dollars to do the stuff that we get to do. Medical training, like a TCCC class on the outside. How much does that cost?
Yeah,
a couple $100?
Yeah.
We get it for free, but these guys will go find any way, any excuse to get out of it. Like me, I'm all about basic soldier skills. Like, I joined for a reason. It's like, I want to get this stuff. I want to learn the knowledge because one day I might have to use it. It's just the same thing with the firearms world, man. Like, you train. You hope to never use it, but when you do, you're ready. It's the same thing with the military. Like, if your buddy gets shot and you're going to freeze up, now your buddy just died because of you. You're competent. Yeah. You didn't want to train. You didn't want to take the medical training to learn how to put it on a tourniquet. Like, something as simple as that. Like, you could have saved your buddy's life, but instead you wanted to go F off in your office and go bull crap in your office. Like, it's just the wrong answer, man. Especially now being in a leadership position, like seeing younger soldiers and they avoid stuff like that, it irks me. Like, it gets to the point where I feel like I'm an old boomer, man. Like, I just want to just like, you get paid to do this. Like, this is literally your job. Like, you're a soldier first. Like, it's right. Totally cliche when people say that, but it's true. Because if you are that support guy and you're in that combat arms unit and that commander says you're going, guess what? You're going. You can refuse if you want to, but it's not going to work out for you. It's just being able to depend on the person to your left and right. And same thing with law enforcement, man. Like, I've never been in that world, but it's the same concept. You have police officers that let themselves go. Don't train. Don't shoot. Don't stay in shape. And then one day you do have to chase somebody down. Like, what are you going to do? Type thing.
Right. Yeah, and that's an interesting dynamic in the law enforcement world. Primarily because that's their sole job. They have that one primary job description. Is in general, it's based around patrol. But even then, even if you move up to a different type of work, such as detective work, you're still a police officer. You know, you're still capable of doing all that. Sometimes some departments you still go on patrol, like you cycle through. So it's kind of interesting where the dynamic in the military world is you have these positions that I guess are not. They have the requirement, the annual PT requirements, I suppose, or whatever the intervals are, but they just don't do it because that's not part of their job or so.
Or they fail. Like, it's like giving you the answers to the test, man. Like, every 6 months we're going to do this. I give you the answers, but then you go and mess around and fail it. Like, I gave you ample amount of time to do. Like, it's happened to me. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, have I failed height and weight? Yeah. I haven't done it. I failed a PT test? Sure. Like, I'm not going to be the one to lie to people and say I haven't. I have been there. Because you do get complacent, you get comfortable. Yeah. Stuff happens, life happens, man. Like, it gets to the best of you sometimes, but you just have to pick yourself back up and get back in there.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean that is interesting insight into understanding why there's not necessarily I guess warring, but why there's bitterness between the combat arms MOSs versus the non versus the sport side. But yeah, but it is kind of really interesting because I mean I've looked into this before too, because there's, you know, everyone talks about ODAs, but no one talks about ODBs. You know, the rest of the damn units. I mean, everybody else that's there to support the ODAs. So nobody ever talks about them, and that's kind of an interesting thing because ODBs are considered technically as special forces as well, right?
Yeah, it's just like the command structure,
right?
But this is how it compared to, man. Like everybody's seen the other guys. Everybody sees Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock. They're the rock stars. They get all the glory. They do all the cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Mark Wahlberg and why am I forgetting his name? Will Ferrell.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have them, all the people in the background that you don't see, and that's us. Like everybody sees these videos of all these dudes getting into firefights, but people don't think of the other side of it.
Right.
Where do you think they're going to get their equipment from? How they're going to get their fuel? How are they going to sustain themselves for months at a time being on a fire base by themselves? Somebody has to give them all that stuff so they can eat, sleep, have water to drink, and have ammo to shoot. That's just the other aspect that doesn't get looked at. Yeah, the other stuff is sexy, it's cool, but then there's us that they need us more than we need them, type thing. And if you look at it, logistics is a big part of every major conflict, all the way from Alexander the Great until now. Like, we're seeing it right now. Like, how do you run out of fuel when you go into a country next to you?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting too, is that I've been watching basically YouTube videos that are created by content creators who have lived the life, basically, if they've retired out. And what's interesting is that one of the videos I've watched was basically it's special operations supplies, basically, where they're going into enemy territory to supply these ODAs that are going there. And it's kind of interesting too, because they are accompanied by combat personnel to support them as they go out, because they need to be protected as well as they're doing their supply runs, right? It's kind of like I guess it's similar to when everybody makes fun of the Air Force when the Air Force does have their combat operations units, you know, like their CCTs, their PJs, and I think there was another one. Is it the Air Force Medical? I think that's a newer one.
So you do have your PJs and combat controllers, and then you have your JTACs too. Yeah,
and then there's like a pop-up, like a special operations medical unit that it's a newer one, I think it is, where they can basically turn any bombarded location into a hospital. They're basically like a mobile hospital, I think is what it is. I don't remember what it is, but I just watched a blip of it, but it was pretty interesting. Interesting things about that is, like, you don't ever hear about these folks, but they go through the same pipelines as everybody else does. Well, some of these teams, but you know, they go through the same pipelines because they're expected to be able to perform to the same degree as the people they're attached to. And what was interesting is the CCTs and the PJs, or at least not the PJs, but the CCTs and the JTACs, because they get attached to so many other units or so many other entities that are outside of the Air Force branch, is that they have to train to that same degree. So CCTs that are attached to like SEALs are trained to the same degree as SEALs are, less like, I don't know, do they have to go through buds? I don't know. But you know, but they go through the same dive school and they have to do free fall and all that stuff too. But that was pretty interesting.
I mean, this is just my own opinion, just being in for this long and now being in a senior position. This is how I see it, especially when I went down to my schooling. So I don't know how it is in the civilian world, but we all have, before we go on to the next ranks, we have to go to we call it NCOES, basically our next school to get to the next rank. Basically advanced management. That's as best as I can put it. But when I went to my most recent school for my senior course, like, I saw it, man. Like, I saw how our perception of my branch, for quartermaster branch, gets put in a bad light. Like, for example, dude, like, I don't care. I'm gonna blast them out. Like, I'm not gonna get the name drop or anything, but I'm just gonna put it out there that there are senior leaders that are around that we ran out for a 4-mile run. Tell me why, like, a quarter mile to a half mile in, we already lost half a formation. Like, I get it, man. Like, there's certain people that are injured. I totally get it. But when you're just so out of shape and you can't keep up, how does that look when you're a senior leader and your soldiers see you falling out? It's not a good look for you.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct especially for things like that, It's like you got to be able to keep up, man.
It is. And then the combat arm, like depending on what unit you're in, if you are in a combat arms unit, the other guys see it and they see it as you as a senior leader in a support position. And there's some private infantry dude that's laughing at you. Like, how do you think that perception is going to be? And that's where it stems from.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I'm curious though. I'm curious if folks in the SOF community, if the ODAs act this way towards their ODBs, basically. I'm curious.
So, just from experience to friends, that like it depends on where you're at, man. Like it depends on the environment. Like I've had friends that have great relationships with the soft guys that they've worked with. They treat them like one of the family. They don't treat them any different. They're basically like, hey, we're gonna bring you in, like you're one of us, you're here to support us. But then I've had friends that have had horrible experiences where they treat them like dirt. Basically as second-class citizens. Like, you're not one of us, we don't care about you. But it honestly depends on the command structure. Like some command structures are super supportive of their guys and gals, and then some commands aren't. Like it really depends on who's running the place. It's not like a one shoe fits all type thing.
Interesting.
It really depends on who's there. Like I've been fortunate to have people that I work for. Like I've never been in a straight logistical, like a lone unit, like a support unit ever. I've always been in combat arms units. It's just the way I was raised in the Army. That's kind of the reason why the way I am now, because it's just my upbringing throughout the military. But some guys don't have that. And then you go to units like that, like specialized units, and you're expected to perform. Now you're expected to perform at a higher level than normal people, even as a support guy, because you're going to be out there with them.
Right.
Those guys are going to be at a fire base somewhere, and guess what? They need support. They're going to go do their mission, and you're going to go support them however you need to.
Yeah, I totally get that, because at that point out there in the field like that, your MOS is kind of irrelevant, because it is a combat application at that point. Everybody's in a combat zone. So I get that, and it's kind of interesting too, because you see the war movies. In the war movies, granted, you see like most people are infantry or on the ground, but they never talk about any of this stuff. Everybody's fighting. Even the folks that are on the base. Whenever bases get attacked, everybody's fighting. So it's pretty interesting. It is a interesting dynamic and interesting insight into this It world.
Is, and I'm not gonna lie, dude. Not everybody is gonna be fighting. Like, especially if it's a big base. Like, they're gonna tell you to shelter in place. Like any active shooter situation, there's specific teams out there that are specifically designed as like, hey, if stuff goes down, they're gonna be activated. They're gonna go. You stay in place and wait till it's all clear. Now you go to a smaller fire base somewhere, and there's only maybe a handful of dudes. Like, you're all fighting to defend your position, type thing. Now, when I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like when I was deployed, I was always at a big base, so I don't have to worry about stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that like, hey, go defend our area. I go pick up this rifle and go, type thing. I never had to deal with that.
Right.
I mean, the closest I ever got to was a 105 millimeter landed like 50 meters from me. That's the craziest stuff I've ever been through.
Yeah, that's definitely a stay in your underwear kind of shit, right?
No, it definitely is. Like, everyone talks about this like whistling sound. It's more of a whirling sound when it comes in. You're like, what the hell? Oh shit. Let me just get on the ground.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's I don't want to say it's kind of like, but you remember the first time you've ever heard rounds fly over you?
So I've never had that happen to me.
Well, I mean, not in combat world, but as far as like shooting on the range.
Yeah.
And
like,
you just hear rounds buzzing because they skipped up or something.
Yeah.
It's just that noise. You're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, like, especially that ricochet noise. Just like, ooh, I wonder where that's going.
Yeah, it sounds like a damn, like, I don't know, like a super fast and fat bee that's flying next to you or something.
Yeah, it's like a whizzing sound. Like, it's hard to explain what it sounds like. We're like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, it's like buzzing and whizzing. It's a really weird sound, but that something's wrong at that point. But it's kind of like one of those situations, or I don't want to say similar to having a shell like land 50 meters from you, but it's like something's wrong, right? It's like
it's like
senses are going off.
Especially when you never heard something before, like that doesn't sound normal. What's that?
Right.
It's like when your instincts just like, that's not out of the norm. Like, what's going on? My advice to you guys, if you are out there and you are active duty, it doesn't care what branch you're in, like, get the training, man. Like, go to the range, go work out. Like, we're all guilty of letting life get the best of us, and then we get lazy. But at the same time, like, you're the forefront, man. Like, you raise your right hand, you know what you have to do to make training standard. And if you're in specialized units, you know you have to go above that. Like, I don't get a lot of shooting training myself. Like, all of this stuff you guys see is out of my own pocket. I had to spend my own money to do all of this stuff. Buy the right gear, because Army issued gear is total crap, by the way. If you guys didn't know that, that's why I run all of the stuff that I have, because I dual purpose it. I use it for personal use and I use it at work.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct on that. You know, there's no necessary need for anyone to go out there and make themselves look like there's something more than what they actually are. I mean, you look at the videos that I post out. It's like, I make so many mistakes in there, but that's the point. It's like, we're just normal people just going out there and do this. There's no cool guy shit necessary to do any of this. No. We're just simply doing what we need to do to basically raise our own skill level as best we can with what we have. You know, there's not necessarily a need to go out there to try and clear rooms with a group of people that you're never going to see again.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
It's good to learn the fundamentals of the basics and that stuff, but you have to be very practical about the type of classes that you take. Because if you take those classes and you never use them again, and you don't frequently train with other people who are using those same techniques, then, like, did you really benefit from taking that class?
Yeah.
You know what
I mean, if you want to do that type of stuff, man, like, it's your money. Like, do whatever you want.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's like, be real with yourself too.
Yep.
Like, I get it, man. Like, I'm all about, like, building your skills. But like you said, if you don't build on it, then what was the point? It's just gonna go. It's like anything, man. Like, you stop shooting for months, you're gonna start sucking on the range. Like, damn, I can't hit the fucking target.
Yep. No, it's true, because then your body is not used to shooting, and the muscles and the joints that you use during those manipulations are gonna go to crap either. I think during the initial shutdown, when we just didn't shoot at all because we couldn't find ammo like anywhere, really. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, the first time out when we were actually running drills, dude, it's like, I swear my hips were popping left and right. Yeah. You know, my knees are giving out and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then you're jerking the trigger because you're
not
still anymore. You're like, oh
yeah, dude. And then like just your general muscles, like, as far as holding up the firearm for a prolonged time too.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like all of a sudden your firearms, you know, your forearm is burning. And you're like, what the hell's going on? You know, yeah, it's because you're not holding the gun up and you're not gripping in that manner. You know, it hasn't been like months since you did that, so that's why.
Well, even like dry firing only does so much before you. Right. Like, recoil is just going to change everything. That's going to be especially with a pistol, man. Like, you can dry fire all day in your house, but until you pull that trigger, that's when you're going to know.
Correct. Yeah, experiencing recoil is a very fundamental portion of shooting, and it's necessary. So dry fire does help with a lot of skills, or a portion of the skills itself, but you need that live fire. Just like training with airsoft nonstop or training with rimfire all day, yeah, it helps with repetitions for movement, but you need the recoil of the full power round that you intend to shoot, because otherwise you're like, what the hell's going on, you know? And it's kind of like Aaron Cowan at Sage Dynamics, when he does a lot of the testing, he does it with full power gold dots, basically, with Woodger 24 grain spear gold dots. And that's because the recoil impulse of self-defense ammunition is very, very different than our range ammunition. Yes. Granted, I think spear does make like their lawman ammo that's supposed to simulate it, but it's still not the same, because you're still getting different impact points and stuff like that, you know. But that does get expensive. So you're just going to, the recommendation there is just to train with the range ammo, and then periodically shoot your defensive ammo just to upkeep it and confirm, you know.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the defensive ammo, I probably have to shoot mine off. Like, I've had that stuff for like years. Mm-hmm. I probably need to start shooting it off and buy new ones. But I mean, with ammo prices now, it's kind of hard to find stuff.
It is.
It's like, but at the same time, like, you don't want to have that case separation when you keep using that same round over and over and over again. When you do shoot it, something bad happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so check your ammo. Who is it? One of my buddies, one of my younger guys, he told me that he periodically, you know, unracks his round, because he goes around kids or he's in a home with kids frequently, and that's just what they do. So they clear, and he's been re-racking it periodically. And then he came over my place once, and he ejected the round. I can't remember. We're doing something to his pistol, and I look at it, I was like, dude, your bullet is like set back into your case.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, oh, I didn't know that. I was like, yeah, dude, you need to either cycle the rounds when you jack it out, or periodically check it to the point where this doesn't happen, because that's like detrimental. And this was his immediate and constant first round in the chamber every time. So he would not only jack it out, he would also reinsert the same round. So of course it's gonna, it was bad, man. It was bad. But he's a younger guy. He just didn't know because no one's taught him this information. So
I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, man. Like, even if you don't have anyone to talk to, like, this stuff's all on YouTube, man. Like, there's hours and hours of, there's stuff on YouTube that you can look up, like, if you don't know, or even like message people on Instagram. Like, I have people in my DM sometimes too asking me certain things, and honestly, sometimes I forget because I had to look at the request. I was like, "Ooh, this guy messaged me 4 months ago." Whoops.
Yeah, I mean, there really is a lot of information out there, and for you folks watching, like, how I learned all this was, besides being inside the industry itself and learning from other people, was back in the day before I even really understood social media. Like, my social media started in 2020 because of all this shutdown stuff, and like, that was when my Instagram, my YouTube, and my channel started to begin with. But prior to even having social media, I had like Facebook, dude. I'm a FUD, man. I'm like a boomer, basically, or the equivalent of a boomer that used Facebook back then. But even then, it was just to see what my family and friends were doing. There was no like constant communication there. So back in those days, we had what was called forums, internet forums. So it was like a message board of information. People would post stuff they find, kind of like Facebook groups, but without the instant gratification of social media, basically. So there was a lot of information there, a lot of FUD too, a lot of misinformation, but there's a lot of good information that's out there, and that's pretty much how I learned a lot of the details that I do as far as this industry goes. But yeah, I mean, details like bullet setback and actually squibs, which I will be making a video on that pretty soon too. But it's basically, that is something that you may or may not have ever even heard of or even experienced, but it's a very real thing. And until you experience it, you don't actually know about it,
Yeah, I mean, so back to my time in North Carolina, that was the time I ended up going to a gun show. I bought some reloads, and then when I was shooting one day, my Glock just stopped working. So it turned out that there was a squib in there, but I didn't know it because I was like, why am I not being able to rack a new round? Like, I couldn't. It was lodged enough where it wouldn't let me rack a new one, but I still couldn't fire it anyway because it wouldn't load the new round. And when I got home, I cleaned the barrel. I took the cleaning rod too. I was like, oh shit, something's stuck in here. Oh, that's a round. Holy crap. Like, this could have been really bad. And I didn't hear it either. Like, none of my buddies heard it or anything because it wasn't that slight pop. Like, why is my gun stop working?
So you knew what squibs were at the time?
I did. I just never experienced one until then. I was like, holy crap, this could have been bad.
Where did you learn about squibs prior? Was that a military training kind of thing?
No, so actually the military doesn't even teach you stuff like that. Like,
really? Oh, no.
Like, well, this is a whole conversation itself, but I guess we're on it now. So there's a whole discussion on like military service in general. Like, with people like me, like your general support MOSs that don't really go to the range a lot. Like, we don't get a whole lot of formal training. Like, once after basic training is over, like, it's really on you to go to the range. Like, depends on how often your unit goes to the range. And then when you do go to the range, it's super, super controlled to the point where it's dumb. Like, the Army, they're all about safety. I get it. Like, you don't want people to get flagged. You don't want people to get shot. But at the same time, like, if we're going to do some real training, you got to take a little bit of risk, but still have that safety factor. And it's like, don't be flagging nobody. But like on an Army range, you can't roll around like we do at the ranges. Your guns are hot. Like, at Army ranges, you need to be locked and clear. Like any other like USPA or any of those type of matches, you need to be locked and clear. That's how it is in the military, but it's just on a dumber version. It's like, okay, we got to double check. No one touch your guns if anyone's going downrange. The simple like safety stuff. But it gets to the point where like these guys are never gonna learn ever.
Mm-hmm.
We get deployed. These guys are not gonna know what it's like to walk around with a loaded weapon, and next thing you know, you're getting flagged in the face when you're going to eat. And that was my thing as far as like being a low density or not for you guys that don't understand what that means. It's basically anyone that's not a combat arms guy that's not kicking indoors. If you don't train on your own, no one else is going to teach you unless your unit is willing to do that type of stuff with you. You don't really learn it. And then I've seen guys that don't go to the range for years. Like I ran a pistol range not too long ago, I think last year. Well, I had a senior leader. We were shooting the M18s for the first time, and we just cleared our weapons, and this guy flags me. Like, I never put my hands on people, but I grabbed his hand so fast, I was like, what do you think you're doing? Like, I didn't care. Like, back then, I was a staff sergeant. I'm sergeant first class now. That guy was a sergeant first class. Like, no. Like, you just flagged me, dude. Like, this is a safety violation.
Yeah, it's like ranks go out the door when there's a safety violation.
Yeah, like this is my range. Like if something happens here, it's my fault. So I'm gonna make sure that everybody here is safe. But I want you guys to have a good time too. Like, I have a range coming up on Monday, like for the unit. So back a little bit. So this week I actually did have a shooting competition.
Mm-hmm.
So I have never done competition before, especially when it comes to like an army style competition. Like it's been a while since I've been standing up shooting at targets at 25 meters and trying to hit a silhouette at certain dots on there. Like, I don't know if you guys ever seen the Army qualification targets, but trying to shoot a 300 meter target at 25 meters, it's really small. And when your arms are already been extended for that period of time, like your arms get tired. Like you were talking, that muscle memory is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't practice that stuff, like we took 7th place, man. Like, we knew we weren't going to win. Like, we had 3 weeks and we didn't even practice, but we still took 7th place.
This was a rifle?
Yeah, it was rifle and pistol. So we actually
okay.
killed the pistol portion. Like, but the rifle portion, we sucked.
Interesting.
But it goes back to the
so it's more like a bullseye competition shooting?
kind of like we had 3. It was all sorts of things. Like, we would shoot at 300 yards, do some sprints, shoot. So we did do some stress shooting too.
I see.
We had a 3-gun competition. The pistol range was probably our best event. Like, we actually did, because most units don't train with pistols. Like, that's another thing with the military.
I remember when the M18s first came out, or the M17s and M18s, the army personnel that they had in those photos were teacupping the SIGs. You know,
like watching that was so cringy. I was like, you picked the worst person to ever be on here. It's like you picked a staff officer that sits behind a desk and hasn't been to the range in 3 years. You couldn't pick anyone else. But I mean, that's the thing with military, man. Like for me, I don't get a lot of formal training either. Like, I had to do a lot of this stuff on my own. I had to spend my own money. I had to spend my own time doing it. And the misconception is like, oh, well, I'm just this job. I'm just a paper pusher. Well, that's the wrong answer, man. Like, I don't care that you're a paper pusher, because one day you're going to be pulled out like, hey, you're going to run this convoy. Make sure these dudes come back in one piece. And that's what happened to me, man. I was in a certain part of the world, and they basically yanked me out of my chair. It's like, look, you're going to run this log convoy. Like, I've never ran a convoy in my freaking life. Like, damn, you're going to tell me I'm in charge of all this crap? And that's the reality, man. Like, you put that uniform on, like, whether it's military or police, like, it's rampant in both worlds. Like, oh, well, I don't have to do this. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. But when something happens and someone's depending on you to save them, what are you going to do? You can't just freeze up and be like, oh, I'm not going to do this. Now you're going to let your buddy die?
Right. I guess that pretty much takes care of the second portion of that initial question was if you had any advice for people who wanted to get into the military or into your field. So I mean, that pretty much covers all that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes for the civilian world too, man. Like, preparedness isn't just the military law enforcement thing. It goes into the civilian world too. Like, we saw this with LA, man. Like, people in really nice neighborhoods having the mentality of, this is never going to happen to me. And look at the security footage that we see almost every day. These people are getting robbed in front of their homes. And these are supposed to be affluent neighborhoods. Right. And that's just the wrong mentality to have. Like, it can never happen to me. Well, when it does, now you're going to freeze up. Like, what do I do? And then now you're wondering why there's so many restrictive laws that you voted for. That I'm not trying to go on a political rant or anything, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
right. Absolutely.
You vote for these certain laws. Now it takes you 10 days to get this pistol that you need to defend your family. Well, that's kind of your fault for having to think that way.
Yeah.
Like, it gets to the point where people think you're paranoid. Like, well, why do you have so many guns? Why do you have this? Well, it's just a preparedness thing. It's not I'm going out there looking for trouble. Like, I know what's out there. Like, I've seen certain things in parts of the world. The world's not a pretty place, man. Like, it's not rainbows and everything else. The world's a pretty messed up place. I mean,
yep, absolutely, man. You know, that's a pretty common theme that's said on my pages and channels. You know, is basically people don't realize, or they forget that, you know, there are a lot of things out there that will kill you and that want to kill you, that are two-legged as well as the four. You know, and it's like, you know, to your comment about people asking, is like, well, why do you have so many guns? Well, yeah, you're absolutely correct. This whole thing is a mentality. It's a mentality of self-preservation, really, and then plus it's none of their damn business what you do with your life, short of the fact that, you know, short of hurting or violating somebody else's civil rights, but you're not, you're just doing what you want to do.
Yeah, and it's fun, man. Like shooting, I don't know what there's a satisfaction in hitting steel at like 50 plus yards. You're like, oh, okay, it's actually pretty cool. Yeah,
that ping is very satisfying. It really is, you know. Especially like the longer distance pings and stuff. Definitely, for sure, it is a nice confirmation. Well, Drew, that's pretty much what we have for the general questions. Do you have any final thoughts or want to talk about anything else?
There's one thing I do want to address. It's like the toxicity within the community. Like, that's a big thing that's going on right now. Like, especially goes back to the people that are just starting. Like, I get it. Like, we joke around, we poke fun at each other, but at the same time, man, like, the new people, like, don't bring them down, man. Help them out. If they generally don't know, don't totally take a dump on the guy and be like, oh, you suck. This sucks. Well, why don't you help him out? Like, I'm guilty of it too. We all are.
Yeah. You know, I try my best to give them at least one or two opportunities to try to rectify. But if they're just responding and snapping back and being anal, then, you know what, fuck it, man. You know, it's personalities like that really need to fall pretty hard before they will rise up to learn, really. You know, and sometimes you can't help that, and that's okay. Let them fall. You know, but you're right though. I mean, some people are just generally like you and I when we first started out. We were just lost souls that didn't quite understand what we were doing, and, you know, any guidance would be helpful. You know, and I guess with that is that comes with a barrage of questions from newbies as you try to teach them. You know, and I know that for those of you that are a little bit more experienced, is half the time you just want to say just research it on your own. And I understand that there is that portion, but, you know, just teach them how to research. You know, emphasize that. Teach them how to research, and then let them find the information from there. Then they'll be self-sufficient at that point.
I mean, you have some pretty good content too about like people first starting. Like, my buddy's about to finish his build. Like, and that's the thing too about finally getting into this stuff. Like, people have reached out to me, especially during 2020 when all the craziness was happening. I did get messages like, hey man, like, things are getting crazy. Like, I need help. Like, what do I do? Type thing. And this is when everything started going scarce. So it's like, you're kind of late to the party, man, but I'll give you what I can. Type thing. Like, recently, my buddy not too long ago reached out to me. I think it's like 3 weeks ago. He's doing his first pistol build. And it is some sort of satisfaction. It's like, oh wow, okay, you trust me enough to ask me for advice. Like, not to warn or anything. It's like, oh, thanks, dude. Like, thanks for trusting me.
No, yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. You know, and you know, and sometimes is they just go to the first person that they know is into firearms or supposed, because we do see that with the stereotypical example of first-time gun owners. Like, yeah, my friend was, you know, he's a cop, so he told me to buy this. It's like, well, no, that's not the right answer. It's simply saying your friend is a cop is not sufficient to establish what he understands and what he's trying to teach you. You know, and that's why we always typically see, unfortunately, young ladies being offered 38 snubbies and stuff like that. You know, it's not the right weapon for them for that particular scenario. No, that you're absolutely correct on that, man. So it's a good thing that you're willing to guide the way, and maybe that should be one of the stepping stones towards your brand when you start off is really the education portion. That's kind of how I started, is really relaying education out. But it's like more so what I know, what I've learned, and what I'm relaying is based on my experiences, and yours may be very different from mine. So it's just a different perspective on similar information.
Yeah, and that's what I like about like our, or not like our group, but just our group in general. Like we all pretty much know each other. Like we all have different experiences. We all bring it together. Like, yeah, we'll poke fun at each other. It's like, oh, haha. But at the same time, like we all have something to bring to the table. And when you guys do find your groups, it's going to be the same thing. You have experience, they have experiences, and you all bring it to the table to make yourselves better. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. I think that's a solid piece of advice that you can give out to the other folks out there. You know, any final thoughts, Drew?
That's pretty much it, man. Like, just be yourself. Like, yeah, you don't have to fake it, man. We've all seen what happens when you fake it. You get skull drug in the community, and that's it, man.
Oh yeah. Yep, absolutely. You know, and then, you know, be humble when people are trying to give you information. You know, be humble, just because even at this phase in my I guess in my journey of firearms, I still don't know everything. You know, no one knows everything, and I'm always willing to take information from anyone, even people that may not necessarily be in the same level of information as I have within this community. So you just have to be humble. So
yeah, for sure, man. Like, especially when you do your first build, you're like, oh, I thought I did everything right. I'm like, well, shoot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things too, and also remember that everybody's different too. Yeah. So your experience with one item can be totally opposite from somebody else. It doesn't make them wrong. It just means that their experience is different. Like sometimes ergonomics come into play. Like certain stocks don't fit people as well. You know, of course, like some people don't like 3 prongs because of the ping. I don't mind them at all, but some people just can't stand them. You know, the whole concept of people wanting to make things quieter, like taking out the AR-15 sprong and the buffer tube. I don't understand that, but hey, more power to you, I guess. Just understand what you're doing it. Like what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it affects the system that you're putting it in. It's the recommendation there.
Well, and yeah, and to add on to that, man, like do what's comfortable for you. Like just because a certain person or certain group of people are doing one thing, it might not fit you.
Yeah.
Like it's all about your preference. Like I build all of my stuff based on what I like. Like, yeah, there's a lot of nicer setups out there, but it doesn't work for me. That's why I build my things this way.
Right. It's the whole trend thing too, right? So, you know, look at the trends and see what they're doing and see why they're doing it, but understand what it is. You know, a lot of times the items that are trendy out there are not necessarily new. They've been done. They're just being reintroduced with like a slight tweak to it. You know, like the whole like the Taal mounts, right? Which were basically a modification of the carry handle mounts or carry handle heights. But you have to understand like the history of how that occurred when they went from the A1, A2 down to the A3 and A4, the flat top series. You know, it was just that need to co-witness. But co-witnessing isn't necessarily a necessity anymore because a lot of people are now going away from iron sights. So but people are circling back now. They're trying to add iron sights back in. What is it? ScaleWorks has just released the world's first 1.93 inch height, 1.93 height iron sights to co-witness with their 1.93 mount.
One, I guess.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, well, it kind of voids the whole purpose of raising the sights to begin with, or the iron sights to clear night vision devices, right? Yes. I mean, technically 1.7 1/3 lower 1/3 does clear night vision. It's just going to be occluding your optical window a little bit, but it's not necessarily a problem. But you know, like a lot of the industry is doing is they're going away from iron sights to begin with. Well, it's not as necessary for a lot of people. So, you know, watch the trends, but understand why they're doing it. Don't necessarily go and chase it unless you understand it and you've made that, you understand why you want it. It's basically the advice.
Yeah, I mean, with that, man, so there's a reason why I put a riser on this, because I do run night vision. Right. And when I did it without, it was really hard to see with it on. It's like, oh, even just regular shooting, like I would have to bend my neck down a little bit, and it did hurt. So it's like, well, the riser helps me. I can see straight now and actually shoot it. It's more comfortable.
Yeah, that's a 512 you have on there.
Yeah, this is a 5.52.
Yeah. So that's so those were, if you guys don't know, that particular EOTech is absolute co-witness. So that riser basically brings it up to a smidge above lower 1/3. So basically it brings it to about what co-witness height would be. So yeah, so that makes even more sense for that, because for Drew's, if he mounted it without the riser on there, that night vision device would be completely blocking his EOTech, like completely. You wouldn't even be able to use the EOTech, I guess, unless you want to use like the bend-in aiming.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm shooting at night vision anyway, I have passive aim anyway. I just use my laser. I don't even look to the sight.
Right, and that's the other thing too. It's like the whole some parts of the industry are really pushing that passive aiming thing, and I get it. There is an aspect of passive aiming, but majority of people are not using it, but passive aiming is probably better off with a clip-on device onto the optic or behind the optic, and then it's a better passive aiming device at that point. But trying to run night vision with your firearm out and trying to line up all the planes that you're trying to view through, it's not an easy thing to do, and to hit accurately with it anyways, it's not very easy to do.
No, especially when you're running night vision, man. Like your field of view is already constricted already, and two, it's dark outside, and you're trying to find your dot. You're like, oh, I can't see anything. Right.
And bear in mind that when you're trying to do that, you're attempting to do it with ambient lighting that's already in the area. You're not turning on your IR device, because if you did, then you would just use your IR device, right? Yeah. So it's not as simple as a lot of the community makes it out to be, or at least the folks that like to argue about this stuff. There's a lot that goes into doing the way that we do things, the way that people do things, and it's not so simple as that.
No, and especially if you've never done it before. Like if you've never ran night vision and shot in the dark with nods and a laser, like the movies do a great job of like, oh, this looks easy, but when you actually get out there, like, holy crap, like I have no idea what I'm doing. It's dark outside. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, right. When Jimmy went up to visit you, when our buddy Jimmy went up to visit Drew, and you took him out for his first night vision day that was out there too, right? So I mean, he had to learn the ropes too. Yeah, and I think that I think we were making fun. We were saying, yeah, man, you should have let him into a wall.
So, funny story about that. So it was actually, the loom that day was really bad. It was cloudy, it was raining, and that spot where we go to at night, it gets super, super dark. But yeah, man, it was a good experience for him. And if you guys have never done it before, if you have friends that do it, like, get out there, man. Like, even with white light, like shooting in the dark will completely change your perspective on everything. Even with a white light, nods, whatever. Just shooting in low light conditions is totally different.
Yep, and there are a lot of companies out there that rent night vision to you too. You just pay your security deposit and they send it to you, you return it, you get it back basically.
Really,
less the fee. Yeah, like A&A, Austin at A&A Tactical, they do that.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, so they allow you to rent night vision out there. And plus, they have their own range now, or rather it's being built. And there are a lot of sponsors at their range, and it's pretty legit. Like, their setup, they have like Velocity Systems, they're tight with them. Shaw Concepts, they're tight with them, so they're like sponsors of their range and stuff. So when you go out there, we could actually plan a trip out there and run their range out there.
Where are they at?
West Virginia.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, if you want to go back to the East Coast, but Austin's cool, dude. But we can certainly do it, and he's offered to host if I ever go out there. Yeah, it'll be an interesting experience.
Yeah, and I think a lot, especially when we did the Vegas shoot, with the rooftop meetup shoot, there were a lot of guys on the East Coast that were like, hey man, like, where was our invite? Like, it's all the West Coast guys. What about our East Coast dudes? I mean, eventually we're gonna have to go out there so we can meet them too. Yeah, I kind of think they get forgotten about, because a lot of us are on the West Coast. Yeah, we're all the way from Utah all the way back to California, but the guys out east get forgotten about. The guys in the South too. Like, we have friends in Georgia, we have friends in that, and then one of the guys I met on Instagram, he lives in the Northeast. It's like he's kind of not really by himself, but he doesn't really get connected with us because he's so far away. Wow, the Northeast, man. That's like, that's the 13 colonies
area.
I feel like they get forgotten about, man, and because we're
Yeah.
all concentrated in one area, we kind of just forget about them.
No, you're right though. But there is a logistical issue
Yes.
that occur. There's timing and planning. Everybody's schedule is difficult,
It
and
is.
it simply is somebody just has to do an event, and then it just has to be coordinated. Here's a package. Pay this. Let's go. And that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
Take the time off. Just do whatever you got to do. Just take the time off. And I found that that's kind of what we have to do when. For locally, for the folks that I'm around more
Yes.
often than you folks are, or at least in my area, it's simply, here's the date, this is the price, this is what we're doing, take the day off, let's go. That's it, right? Kind of like USPSA, when you try to coordinate like 5 different people's schedules, like, nope, here's the date, this is the time, this is the cost, just get the day off and let's go. And that's just kind of how you have to do it. Really.
Yeah, and that's the advice to everyone else too. Is like, start local, man. You don't have to spend all this money and travel and go see people.
Mhm.
You can just start in your general area. Like people like to dump on California all the time. California this, California that. Well, I will tell you, being from there, there's a lot of gun owners in California.
Yeah.
Like you guys already, and then there's other groups too. Like there's a lot of people there that are willing to teach or do whatever. I mean, definitely vet your people, but
Mhm.
there's a bunch of people to teach you guys. You just have to start getting yourself out there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's pretty much all the questions here. Any more final thoughts, Drew?
Actually, I will bring up one more thing. So
Sure,
I know
go
like
for
a lot of us own weapons. We shoot at targets all day. But we don't think of the other aspect of it. It's like if we do have to pull that trigger and we accidentally shoot something we're not supposed to. So background, Dynamic Target Solutions. If you guys haven't heard of them, check them out. They're on Instagram. So they actually did fly up here to the Pacific Northwest. They actually gave a set to Phil the Unlucky Duck and then Mike the Great. If you guys haven't seen them on Instagram, well, we put those two together and they ran a course of fire for us. And it was basically a no shoot scenario. We had 8 targets up, certain were threats and certain weren't. You had to determine whether or not you're going to shoot this person. Like, I know we all carry all the time, but you throw factors of you're in a crowded area, you're confined space, all that. So we had different scenarios during the day and at night. And I can tell you at night, it is not easy to do PID at nighttime. And I was running night vision with a laser with a loom, and I still couldn't figure out if this person had a gun or if they had a cell phone with them, even with all that gear. Like even during the daytime, it's like, oh, is that a gun? Is that a cell phone? And it gives you a different perspective. Like for all these situations, like when you actually go through that type of training, not only training, but just like a scenario, like, ooh, you have a new respect for when incidents do happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. At least it gets your brain working in that direction. Granted, in real life, there's always other factors that involve, like the factors that may not even make it as easy, or factors that may make it easier for you to identify. But you never know. But the point is that the real world is very dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. And you can never predict how things go. You just have to be trained enough and to be able to react and hope that you react properly when that time comes. But Drew's absolutely correct. Is anytime you get too comfortable, is you need to change it up a little bit. Get yourself uncomfortable again, so that you learn to work your OODA loop and start to think things through and figure things out in different situations. Otherwise, you get shell shocked and you just kind of freeze up whenever something happens that you've never experienced before. And I'm sure you've experienced that before too, Drew.
No, I haven't gone there yet, but
no. As far as getting just like shell shocked, as far as some random thing, or it's kind of like your first malfunction you ever experienced. You see people just kind of freeze up, that same scenario.
Yeah, you just gotta, like, especially if you do run, like guys that are new shooting, like they don't know how to clear malfunctions. Like, oh, you have a double feed. Like, what am I gonna do?
Right.
You just freeze up.
Right.
But...
Yeah, and those skills are specifically taught too. I'm pretty sure they taught you malfunction clearing through basic, I imagine. Mm-hmm. I don't know necessarily for pistol, but for me, like, I had to be formally taught that. But otherwise, I can't imagine that people who are first starting out, who haven't taken any classes, don't understand how to clear malfunctions. They usually just kind of freeze up and look at the gun. Hopefully they don't look down the barrel, as we've seen a lot of people do. But it is important that you do get guidance from people, not necessarily just how to shoot, like how to pull the trigger, but how to really do everything, because it's not so simple as just pulling the trigger. There is a lot that goes into being a firearms owner beyond just a shooter. So yeah, it's important. Find your tribe, right?
Yeah,
the cliche.
I'm not gonna lie, man. Like when I did that scenario, I did shoot a hostage. I was like, oh crap! Like if this was real, I would have gone straight to jail because I shot someone I was not supposed to.
Oh, the dynamic targets or so.
Yeah. So yeah, because we had actually. One of the targets was an Asian dude. We called him Uncle Rex actually called him Uncle Roger because he looked like somebody's people, man. I swear to God. He did. He had the pot belly and everything. One picture had him with a gun. The other one, I think, was a water bottle in his hand.
Oh man, well that's certainly a good learning experience, and you know, I guess you folks can try that if you really wanted to. Is you know, have your buddy just mark areas as no shoots, and then, well, I mean, we do this for competition, or at least in my experience. Granted, I'm a newbie, but they have no shoot targets where if you hit the no shoot, then you know it's a heavy penalty on your score. So yeah, it's certainly a good scenario, but you know, like before, break the monotony up. If you get too used to something, change something up. I mean, it's really how you get better at anything, really.
Yeah, and honestly, just have fun doing it, man. Like all of us enjoy what we do. Like this is totally enjoyable. This is a really expensive hobby, but it's super fun.
Right. Yeah, understand. You really have to understand what you're getting into when getting to this world. But the first step is to get into it. That really is kind of how it is. So yeah, that's awesome advice from Drew. Thank you so much for coming on. For you folks who are watching, this was episode 7 of Inside the Industry, and my buddy Drew Taal of Drew's Shenanigans, and we'll put his Instagram down below. Go give him a follow, see what he's doing. I'm sure that his journey with the military is going to be very exciting for him as he finally closes that chapter in his life and start anew with whatever it is he wants to do with his brand.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
To finally talk in this.
Yeah, right. Well, in this formal setting, rather, outside of our informal banter that we normally have on the day.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much it, everybody. Thank you for watching. Go ahead and sign out there, Drew, or say goodbye, rather.
Thanks for
All right,
listening.
guys, take care.